But let's bring you the big breaking news that's coming in once again. Russia warning of another big attack on the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv has now asked all civilians to evacuate the Ukrainian capital. Russia has struck a TV tower in Kyiv and plans to attack security services infrastructure next. Satellite images are showing 64-kilometer long Russian army convoy now closing in on the Ukrainian capital. Kyiv is Russia's new target after laying siege in Kharkiv. Remember, an Indian student, Naveen Shekharappa, died in Kharkiv in shelling this morning. But the focus at the moment is on Kyiv, where all citizens, including all Indian nationals, have been asked to leave the city. Gaurav Sawant is tracking it in Kyiv. He is now on the outskirts of the city. Gaurav, I hope first of all you're safe. There's this warning that's been issued for everyone to leave Kyiv. Give us a sense of what's happening on the ground.
Rajdeep, the situation is extremely grim in Kyiv, especially after this huge attack that's taken place in Kharkiv. And for us Indians, it's hit us closer home with one Indian budding doctor who lost his life in the Russian attack. And the attacks are extremely fierce. The fact that missiles are being used to target civilian localities and administrative building in this case, the fact that rockets, Grad rockets, artillery rockets, missiles, they are being fired by the Russians shows the intensity of the attack on day 6, given the fact that the Russians haven't been able to take control either of the second largest city, which is barely 25 kilometers from the Russian border, to Kyiv, which is now the next target, with warnings from Russia, whether it's the Russian media or Russian, or through social media. The warning is very clear. All civilians and non-combatants need to leave Kyiv as quickly as possible. Now, this in fact has compelled the government also to issue an advisory to all Indians, Rajdeep, to leave Kyiv as quickly as possible, as urgently as possible, as the government put it. The government here, Rajdeep, is running free trains. Now they're taking no money, no tickets. Get into a train, get to the west, get out of Kyiv. It's for Indians, it's for all foreigners, it's also for all locals, except for able-bodied men. Men between the age of 20 and 50 are not being permitted to leave, even with their families. So very tearful scenes at the railway station where I was just a short while back, where men, including soldiers, came to see off their families, their women, their children, their parents. They boarded trains and left for safer areas, if at all they remain safe. And the question is, how long will they remain safe? And men then are joining the front lines. We also travelled across the city today, Rajdeep, and very, very grim scenes there, with roadblocks and checkpoints almost every few kilometers, Rajdeep.
So how long before the Russians actually close into Kyiv? Because they've been slowly proceeding towards Kyiv over the last 48 hours. Is it that later tonight they intend to plan these attacks, and that's the reason why all civilians are being asked to evacuate?
Rajdeep, it could well be later tonight, but God forbid, because that would mean that all civilians or most civilians would not have been able to leave. That 64-kilometer long convoy that you were just talking about, that's inching forward. As it inches forward, it's inching forward virtually unchallenged from the skies. And this is a very dangerous sign which would indicate that the Russians are in complete control of the airspace. There are no Ukrainian aircraft that are flying anywhere, which means there are also no unmanned combat aerial vehicles. The chief of security staff here, the chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, 2 days ago had tweeted out a picture put out a picture on social media, Rajdeep, that showed an unmanned combat aerial vehicle that went and slammed itself into a missile carrier that was coming, and several tanks were also destroyed. And that was disruptive technology. If the Ukrainians had UCAVs, it would have been a disaster for the Russians with such huge convoys coming in, but they haven't been targeted just as yet. Of course, today the media here is saying, Rajdeep, that 70 pilots from Ukraine have gone to Poland. They will come back with 70 aircraft. The Americans, the Germans, several other countries have promised them anti-tank guided missiles. They've promised Ukraine surface-to-air missiles, Stinger missiles. But when these ATGMs and SAMs come in, nobody knows. And will it be too late by the time these resources come in. The Ukrainians are fighting, they're fighting hard. Men and women, including some of the combat veterans, they are now coming back to join the forces to fight back. But it does appear to be a rather unequal fight where the Russians are militarily superior with a lot of arms and the Ukrainians fighting on sheer willpower and some of the Western equipment that they have.
As you say, they are running out of time. We are also showing you visuals, Gaurav, of a TV tower that has been blasted a short while ago. We saw a government building this morning being blasted in Kharkiv, now a TV tower. Is there a sense that the Russians are targeting this infrastructure in Kyiv, much as they have done in Kharkiv?
Rajdeep, you've hit the nail on its head. It's very strategic targeting of infrastructure that Ukraine could have used to its advantage. How is this happening? First, all the 14 airfields were taken out, 8 in the east, the remaining the center and west. So now air power cannot be used, radar stations destroyed, surface to air missiles destroyed, air defense system destroyed, then some crucial infrastructure targeted, crucial cities targeted, an attack that was taking place from the north and the south, also intensification of operations from the east, now communications being damaged and then moving into cities. So it's almost as if the Russians are moving to a plan, whether it's slower than they would have expected, whether they anticipated Ukrainians fighting back and fighting back so hard, is a question that we'll know probably only, the answer to which only later.
Right.
But the Ukrainians have tremendous willpower to fight back and not give up without a fight. They desperately need more anti-tank guided missiles and surface-to-air missiles. If some of this equipment perhaps had come in a couple of months earlier, this fight would have perhaps been even harder for the Russians to take to the Ukrainian capital, which perhaps they intend to do over the next 24 to 48 hours.
Gaurav, you stay safe and we'll continue to keep track of all that's happening on the ground with you. Thanks very much for joining me here on the Top of the News today.